So, my presentation is about George Gershwin and is the rise of Broadway and jazz-influenced music and musicals, or jazz Broadways in a sense. It's by myself, Calvin Vaughn. So, the biographical information about Gershwin, even though for some of these presentations it's not as important, I feel like this is because it's very interesting, because his parents were immigrants and they were entrepreneurs. So he actually had musical upbringing that necessarily impacted him. It was more direct influence and direct drive to pursue music. So I think it's interesting to see what influenced Gershwin. So he was born September 26, 1898. Growing up, he grew in the Yiddish theater district of New York and got to see a lot of romantic operas and stuff like that, romantic symphonies. So that had a pretty big influence on his composition. So at the age of about 8 or 9, his older brother Ira Gershwin, his parents gave him a piano because his parents weren't really poor. They were pretty decent entrepreneurs, and pianos got very affordable for the house. Ira was a musician after he got the piano, but he wasn't as good as George, and even though the piano wasn't geared towards George kind of took over the piano in a sense, and George became a bigger, well-known musician. Ira was actually still a musician, and he actually always helped his brother out. He would write lyrics a lot when Gershwin composed music. So once he started getting his piano skills down, he got them down relatively quickly, and he was very proficient in piano. And he actually dropped out of high school, and he was a song plugger in the Tin Pan Alley, which the Tin Pan Alley was kind of a huge place in New York where jazz kind of, came to the rise in about the 1910s, 1920, early 1920s. So he was a song plugger there and had a huge influence. So that's already 2 huge influences on his life, was just piano, or 3, piano, romantic kind of music, and jazz. And a song plugger pretty much composed music or sold sheet music that they really liked and tried to get sheet music out there. So yes, so he was a song plugger. After this time in his life, he kind of, started getting a little money. So he started to travel, and he started to study with many musicians, either in compositional techniques or piano. One of the biggest people was Henry Cowell, which was a huge jazz pianist at the start of the jazz boom. So he had a lot of jazz influence, and he was also a very young bachelor, and he toured Europe. So that's a very interesting thing to note, is he had so much influence. After all the influence I just listed, you can add European style music into that. Most of his major works were actually composed within about a 13-year period, because he died at the age of 38. So that was kind of an early death, I would say. And some of his biggest works speak for themselves. Rhapsody in Blue, An American in Paris, 3 Preludes for piano, Porgy and Bess, Shall We Dance, I've Got Rhythm. He pretty much dominated any orchestra, Broadway, or cinemas at his time. So he pretty much had just a huge influence, and he is actually one of the first major composers in American history, in actually America. So, yeah.
Cool. Good job. There were a couple things I didn't know. Let's see, let's go back to... I didn't know he composed Rhapsody in Blue, so that's pretty neat. You had a couple ums and stuff in there. If you just work those out, the information on the slide seems to be pretty good, geared towards the first part of your presentation, the biographical information. I think overall you got a solid start. Presentation looks really nice. And yeah, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Max.